Okay, I'm sure you are now seeing my screen, right? Somewhat clear. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, thank you. So, okay, on this one, we're just going to start on HTML. I'm sure you know what is HTML. And the HTML is just a markup language, hypertext markup language. This is the language that we use to give the structure to our websites, or is the language that you use to come up with the structure of your website. You want to come up with the structure of your website, that's when HTML came in. That's where you can use HTML. So with other languages that you are talking about, you are not going to use them to come up with the structure of the HTML. But this one, hypertext markup language, the one that you are going to use so that you can come up with the structure or the basic structure of your website, just like that. So normally HTML uses what we call the elements or the text is what we call the elements or the text. So before that, maybe you can just talk of things that you need for you to be able to do this module very well. What you need, mostly you need a server. You need what you call a server. Sorry, I need to take this. I need to take this call. Sorry, okay. Was saying for you to be able to do this module, what you need is a server. And normally on server, we normally use WAMP or XAMPP. We normally use WAMP or XAMPP server. Normally use WAMP or XAMPP. If I come here, maybe WAMP server. I'm sure you have been using this one on this one. You need this WAMP or XAMPP server. Normally, the WAMP server is for the Windows. This one is the one that you normally use. And then the XAMPP is for Linux, but you can also use it on a Windows environment. This is the one that you want so that you can run the PHP code. On HTML only, you can actually use it without, you just need a browser and then you run your code. You need an editor and then the browser. You write your code there on the editor and then you run on a browser. It can just run directly. But on PHP, you need a server. Normally use this WAMP server, and then you can execute your code. Inside the WAMP server, you need to find a directory called www. I'm sure it's www. And then on WAMP server, I'm sure on some server it's htdocs, and then that's where you put your projects. And then when it comes to run, you run through the local host. And then you execute your code there. That's what you want. And then the editor is just the text editor. You can use any text editor, VS Code, brackets, or even the one that comes with Windows, the Notepad or the Notepad++. You can write your HTML code there. Okay. And then the basic syntax for the HTML, I said, is just the use of what of tags. So you need to know the use of elements. You need to know the HTML elements. After knowing the HTML elements, what you need to know there maybe is how do they look, or the syntax there. You just want to understand the syntax there. Just want to understand each and every tag here. Once you get that, you are good to go with the HTML. You are good to go with the HTML. So normally an HTML document, you just be looking like this one. Normally the HTML tag, this one, and then you have the head section, and then you have the body. section. So each and every section in each and every section in you need just to understand the cities. You need to understand the cities. So each and every HTML elements, maybe if I just came here where we have the HTML elements. If you look at this one, HTML element, the HTML element is everything from the start tag to the end tag. So it is the concept of text. It is the concept of text. You have two tags. Normally, you have those elements which have got two tags, the first tag and the second tag. So this first tag, you use this opening and closing brackets, this one, the less than and the greater than symbol. And then within that, you put the tag name. That's where you put the tag name. And then this one is the closing tag name, is the closing tag name. And if you look at it, we have this forward slash and then this tag name to close that element. So element is just made up of what? Of two tags, normally not of two tags, of tag names and the content which goes in between. So examples of HTML elements, you have got this one, the H for headings, H1, and then for the paragraph, and then the break. Normally I use it to break or to go to a new line. This one, and it's a single tag element. It's a single tag element. It doesn't have two tags. Also, you need to take note of how do you nesting these elements. Normally in HTML, you do a lot of nesting. When you put another tag, another element inside another element, that's what you call nesting. If you look at this one, for this HTML element, this one, and then you nest all other elements inside this HTML element, just like that. So you have a lot of nesting here. So you need to be comfortable with that. You need to be able to follow which one is inside which HTML element. So the HTML element is the root element, and it defines the whole HTML document. So for us to know that this is the HTML document, you need to put all the code inside the HTML tag. You need to put the all inside the HTML tag. Sorry, I was attending to someone. So that's it here. I'm sure you need to understand that how do you nest? How do you nest? And also you need to understand the sections of the HTML document. I'm sure if you have been coding on this one, all these things something that you can understand. Maybe you need to just look at the HTML attributes, the attributes. Okay. So HTML attributes provide additional information about HTML element. All HTML elements can have attributes, and attributes provide additional information about HTML elements. Attributes are always specified in the start tag. So whenever you want to put an attribute, you need to know that you put it on the what? On the first tag. So attributes usually come in a name or a value pairs, like name is equal to file, especially if you want to use CSS on a tag. Normally you need to give it a name, or you can actually access it through its class or class ID or a name or the tag name, something like that. So normally you need these attributes, especially for CSS or to identify it using on PHP side. You need such tags. You need not tags as such, you need such attributes. For example, if it is a link, you have created an anchor tag, which is an A, which defines a hyperlink. So for you to give it that link, when you click it so that you can visit that link, you need to use a hypertext reference, href, hyperlink, which is a hyperlink reference, and you give it just like that. So use the equal sign and then you put the quotes there for that. Even if it is the image, I'm sure this tag, you need to take note of this tag as well, the image And then there's the SRC for source, which is the SRC attribute that we use to specify the path for the image. You need to take note of this one. Normally ask this tag in our exams. You need to take note of that. So normally, I just wanted you to just appreciate the HTML, just to appreciate the HTML. You can have paragraphs, maybe on the styles. You are going to talk about the styles on its own. I'm going to talk about this on its own. But I just wanted you to just appreciate the HTML, the basic code for HTML. So normally, if you look at this one, for the body, everything that you want to display, you put it inside the body, and then you normally have the head section in between here. That's where you put the title. That's where you put maybe the meta text or metadata. What the website is it about? That's where you put everything there inside the head section. So that's what I wanted you to actually appreciate. We just go back here later where we'll be actually try to do some code there. But for now, let me share this slide. Okay, just want to talk about the dynamic content and the web. So there are two types of web pages. Normally, we've got the static and the dynamic web page. The static and the dynamic web page. And when you're talking about a static web page, is the one which is not interactive, is the one which is there just to display information. It's just there to display information, maybe to advertise, or maybe to just display maybe our contact details, but nothing more. So it's a static web page. It can't interact with the user, or the user cannot actually do some operations there, but only to read what's there. So that's what we call a static web page. So a static site provides hyperlinked text and perhaps a login screen, but beyond that, it doesn't require additional participation from the user. So that's what we call a static web page. In other words, dynamic means that the user interacts more with the website beyond just reading pages, and the website responds accordingly. So you can do more there. Maybe you can create something, maybe you can manage something there. It's no longer just a static web page. So 3 components are required for creating and running dynamic web pages. And what are those things? You need a web server, you need a server-side programming language, and a database. And that's why we are doing this course. That's why you are seeing that we're emphasizing that you need to use a server there. That's why you are saying you need to use PHP, which is the server-side programming language. That's why you're saying you need to use the database. And take note that we are not going to do the database like starting what is SQL, how do you write SQL? Because this is the module that you have done when you are in what? I'm sure it's 1-2. It's 1-2. You have done database design. That's where you have done the SQL. So here we assume that you have actually learned all these things. Maybe what you just want to learn here is the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, and the PHP. Okay, so PHP and MySQL make creating dynamic websites simpler, easier, and faster. PHP is a programming language or a scripting language designed to generate web pages interactively on the computer, saving them or code a web server. That's the PHP for you. So PHP code runs between the requested page and the web server, adding to and changing the basic HTML output. So in other words, we are just saying PHP is a server-side scripting language, which means that it runs on the server. You as a user, maybe you just come to the internet with your PC, then you just have the interface for you, and then you request the data from the server. So every query that you send, PHP is going to actually accept that query and then do the manipulation and then give the feedback, maybe as a form of web page or whatever you are going to get. So that's the purpose of having PHP in your code. So it's a server-side scripting language. If you go to Google, what you see on the browser there, when you Google something, what you see is the HTML. Is the HTML, is the CSS, maybe it's the JavaScript. That's what you see there. You do not see the PHP. But if you request something from the server, that's where you see the PHP come into place. That's where you see the database there. Maybe you want to log in. When you click login, that's when you see the PHP code working there. Because you send the request to the server, and then the server will actually check into the database, which is the PHP now, which will be checking the database and see if the code, if the data you've provided is actually a correct credentials for you to log in. If it is so, and then it will actually log you in and give you the feedback, just like that. And normally the feedback maybe will come in form of what? Of HTML, or just a string there which will be displayed that you have actually logged in, just like that. So that's the purpose of the PHP there. So it's there for you to be able to create the dynamic content or dynamic website, just like that. So while PHP is great for developing web functionality, it is not a database. So you need a database. So the database of choice for PHP developers is MySQL, which acts like a filing clerk for PHP processed user information. So in other words, when PHP was being developed, when MySQL was being developed and PHP, they were both developed in mind thing of the other language, right? So MySQL is easily accessed from PHP, and they are commonly used together as they work well hand in hand and run on various computer types, operating systems, including macOS, Windows-based PCs, and Linux. So PHP and MySQL work well together. PHP and MySQL have been developed with each other in mind, so they are easy to use together. You find it out that it is actually very, very simple to integrate PHP and MySQL. It is very, very simple to connect the MySQL database to your PHP code. Very, very simple. Even to retrieve the data is very, very simple. And there are a lot of ways that you can use. So the programming interface between them are logically paired up, working together wasn't an afterthought when the developers created the PHP and MySQL interface. So PHP and MySQL have open source power. PHP is an open source. If you look at the guy code, I'm sure it's Nonimaduro or some. Yeah, I'm sure it's Nonimaduro. If you look at that guy, he's doing a lot on the PHP side. Normally, it's pushing for Laravel, which is a framework for PHP. You need to look at that one. Laravel, which is the framework for PHP. It's also a good framework for web developers. It's also a good framework for web developers. There are a lot of libraries that you can use to for development, for web development. You can choose. There are a lot of them, but Laravel, I'm sure, is the one that you can also easily understand, because it's the one that you are using PHP on this module. So I can't refer you to others, but only to Laravel was the one which you'll be using PHP. And you can actually integrate with a lot of other libraries, especially for JavaScript as well. There are a lot of them. Okay, so as they are both open source projects, PHP and MySQL can both be used for free. So I'm sure up to now you understand where you can use PHP and where you can use MySQL. Maybe now, and even where you can use the HTML, like what I've actually insisted at first. Maybe now you can ask maybe on where do I have to use the CSS, maybe in the JavaScript there. So advanced users have the ability to make changes to the source code and therefore change the way the language and programs work. So these are just advantages of using PHP. So PHP and MySQL have community support. If you are like what I was saying here, there's a guy that I know, especially on Twitter, who is pushing for PHP. That's the commit that you're talking about. If you've actually encountered an error, now or these days PHP is being covered a lot. It's being covered a lot. You won't have an error that you think maybe it's your own error, or you are the first person to have that error. If you just Google it, you can quickly or you can easily fix that error, just like that. Just like that. So PHP and the MySQL are fast. PHP and MySQL don't bog you down with unnecessary details. So there are a lot of things to consider. But let's look at the components of a dynamic web application. Let's look at the components of a dynamic web application. So we now understand that there are three main components to create dynamic web pages, which is a web server, a server-side programming language, and a database. So in this course, you are going to use the Apache web server, the PHP is your server-side programming language, and the MySQL is your database. And on Apache web server, normally comes in what? In WAMP or in XAMPP. So you need these three either as one suite or you can download them separately. So first, Apache needs to be installed and operational before PHP and MySQL can be installed, or else they won't work correctly. So the procedure there, you need to install the Apache first, and then you can install the PHP and the MySQL. So now our pages can potentially have information come from HTML files that reference the CSS, PHP templates, and the MySQL database all at once. So let's talk about requesting data from a web page. Just want you to see how does it work. So how all of these pieces integrate together can be tricky to understand. So if your web server detects PHP code, it determines whether the file is a PHP file, and if so, turn over the processing of the page to the PHP interpreter without any additional participation by the web browser. So we are just saying, look at this one. We are actually brought together, or we are bringing together a lot of languages to create maybe just one single web page. So how that web page is going to be executed, right? So whenever the browser actually reaches to a PHP code, just check if the file is the PHP file. If so, then it turns the interpreter to a PHP interpreter. Then it interprets that accordingly. If it is JavaScript, it does the same, just like that. So, but if you include an external CSS file, your browser issues a separate request for that file before viewing the page. So it's just like that. If you are doing your code and and it happens that you put your CS code in an external file, the browser normally requests that CSS file before displaying everything, so that the code in the external CSS file will actually take its effect, just like that. So PHP interpretation on the server side, how does it work? So this processing of the PHP on the server side is called server-side processing. When you request a web page, you trigger a whole chain of events as shown below. So let's look at, like, when you Google or when you request something, you request something on the internet. Just like what I was actually doing when I was looking at Apache. Not Apache, I was looking into WAMP server. When I just type in WAMP server, if you look at that, this is the process that had actually happened. This is what happened. This is what happened. I requested the WAMP server, but here we are just requesting the phone directory from phone.com. From phone.com, and then we want the directory.html. So here is my browser, and I'm just typing here. So after typing here at this first event, so the second thing, the request will be actually sent to the server. On the server side, what we are doing here, we have got a web host. This web hoster, or our server here, is the one which is going to process here at number 3. So it processes this request. And what is this request is doing there is requesting for an HTML page called the directory. So what it does, it takes that from its storage. and then give it back to the web host, and then it will send the response. And the response is what? Is this directory.html file, and then it will get displayed on my screen, just like that, on my screen. So that's how this works. That's how this works whenever you request or send a request. So the process are as follows. You enter a web page address in your browser's location bar. Your browser breaks apart that address and sends the name of the page to the server. For example, this one, which is phone.com directory.html. So to request the page directory.html from what? From this domain, phone.com. That's what will happen there. So a program on the web server called the web server process takes the request for directory.html and looks for this specific file. So if you look at this one, the web server process that we are talking about is now the PHP. It's the one which looks for this one directory and then retrieve it from the hard disk or from its storage. And then it will actually give it as a feedback. So the web server reads the directory.html file from the web server's hard drive, and then the web server returns the contents of directory.html to your browser. Your web browser uses the HTML markup that was retained from the web server to build the rendition of the web page on your computer screen. So the HTML file called directory.html requested in here is called a static web page. It is a static because everyone who requested the directory.html page gets exactly the same page. Normally, these HTML pages, they are static pages. So the PHP interpretation, MySQL, and the web server cooperation to return the page. Just want to see how does this happen? How does this happen? You just go there and Google and you just get your response. And you just, oh, this is cool, but you do not actually appreciate how is this actually happens, how this happens. So for the web server to customize the returned page, PHP and MySQL are added to the mix as illustrated below. So on this one, you see, I've seen that we've actually given the what a static web page. But now let's look at this one. We now have the PHP and MySQL. So if you look at this one, you are just entering your URL here, right? And then the request, when you click enter here, after typing www.plain.com login.php, the request will be sent to your web host or the server. And then what happens there, if you look at that, the web server will request the information from what? From the hard disk. And then after that, the PHP interpreter, because here you want to log in, right? The PHP interpreter is the one which is going to look on that code. But it's not just going to look on your request only. If you want to log in, it is going to request the database to actually see if the credentials that you are actually giving are the correct ones. So it pulls the data from the what? From the MySQL. And then it actually interprets that data. After doing the interpretation, it will give the what? The feedback to my computer. And it will render that. Maybe it will just log in there, or it will just say that you have provided wrong details, maybe for password or whatever. So it's not the same information that if we're going to get is going to get there. You see the dynamic part of it. Maybe if I go there, I'll be able to log in and then you'll be given something different. But if someone comes there and fail to log in, you'll get something different. Maybe I've put the wrong password there, or maybe I've put so you see the dynamic part of it. That's when you use the PHP and the MySQL, just like that. So the steps in the chain are as follows. You enter a web page address in your browser's location. Your browser breaks apart the address and sends the name of the page to the host, which is a login page, and requests that the login.php form from this one, and the web server process on the host receives the request for login.php. The web server reads the login.php file from the host hard drive, and then the web server detects that the PHP file isn't just a plain HTML file, so it tasks another process, which is the PHP interpreter, to process the file. So the PHP interpreter executes the PHP code that it finds in the text it received from the web server process, including that code calls to the MySQL database. Just like that. So the PHP asks the MySQL database process to execute the database calls. So the MySQL database process returns the results of the database query, and then the PHP interpreter completes its execution of the PHP code with the data from the database and returns the results to the web server process. Then the web server returns the results in the form of HTML text to your browser. So your web browser uses the returned HTML text to build the web page on your screen. And this may seem like a lot of steps, but all of this process happens automatically every time a web page with PHP code is requested. And it would actually happen in what? In milliseconds, mostly in milliseconds. When you just Google something, all these steps will actually occur. So let's look at coding with PHP. Once PHP, MySQL, and Apache are installed, you are ready to begin your coding. Like what I've said earlier, you need a server for you to be able to run the PHP. So how do you escape to PHP? You want to code PHP, maybe you created an HTML file, which will give you the structure of the what? Of your web page, and then now you want to run the PHP. How do you do that? You can use what you call escaping to PHP. You want to maybe to move from what, from the HTML code to PHP. How do you do that? You escape to PHP. So the PHP parsing engine needs a way to differentiate PHP code from other elements in the page. So the mechanism for doing so is known as escaping to PHP. So there are 4 ways to do this. There are what? There are 4 ways to do this. So make sure that you know maybe all of them, or maybe 2 of them, but it's actually very, very easy. If you code in PHP, it's very, very easy to get to know. But sometimes you want to mix the PHP with the HTML code. So it's very, very easy if you've been actually programmed in what? Let's make sure that you mute our mics. Let's make sure that you mute our mics. Thank you for that. Okay. So I saying it's very, very easy for you to actually grasp this. It's very, very easy. So there are what you call default text, there are short text, there are script text, as well as ASP style text. So normally the default texts are the ones that you mainly use. So the default texts are perhaps those most commonly used by PHP programmers due to clarity and the convenience of use, which is the PHP, this text with the PHP code, the PHP keyword. You want to escape to PHP, this is what you do. Open bracket, and then this the less than, what you call that symbol, and then you put a question mark, and then you put PHP keyword, and then everything that follows in between this question mark and this PHP, everything that happens there will be regarded as PHP code, will be regarded as what? As PHP code. So that's the first way. So these tags may also be the most practical ones, because the initial escape characters are followed by PHP, which explicitly makes reference to the data to the type of what? Of code that follows. So normally this one is the most convenient way, because it have got the PHP keyword there. So this can be useful because you may be simultaneously using several technologies in the same page, such as JavaScript, server-side includes, and PHP, something like that. So maybe you are running JavaScript in the same document with PHP. So you want to separate the PHP code from the JavaScript code so that you will not have any error. So any ensuing PHP code, you then follow the initial escape sequence preceded by the closing escape sequence, which is this one, the question mark and this greater than symbol. And then there's the short text where you just leave the PHP here. Just leave the PHP from this one, just leave this PHP. So it's just the short code, the short text. So the short text style is the shortest available for escaping to PHP code. You can just leave that PHP keyword here, and then you just put this and then the question mark, and then you put this question mark and the greater. Everything which will be in between this will be regarded as PHP code. And then there is the script text. Here you just say script, and then on a language, you specify that the language is PHP. Can use the script text to escape to PHP. So anything in between will be regarded as what? As PHP code, just like that. And then there is the SP, where the ASP style text, the ASP style text, which is the active server page, where you can use this percentage, right? And everything in between will be regarded as PHP code, just like that. So normally this is how you escape to PHP code. So you normally escape to PHP code. And then normally, let's just talk about these things, the variables and data types. I'm not going to define what a variable is. I'm sure you are very used to all these things as people who have been actually programming in many languages. You've done C, you've done C++, you've done Java. What else? You've done what's this one? What's this one? C#. You've done C#. What else? You've done, I'm sure you've done a lot of programming languages which involve these variables and these data types. I'm sure you know all these things. So PHP provides support for 6 general data types, which is integers, floating point numbers, strings, array, objects, and booleans. So these are the data types that we have in PHP. And I'm sure you are well versed with these words. Integers, you're just referring to integers, floating point numbers, those with commas, the doubles, all those are the decimals. And then strings, just a collection of characters there. And then arrays, I'm sure you know what an array is, and you know that it is in the index. And here we normally have the associative arrays as well. And then the index there, you know, I am sure you just look at that later. And then we've got what we call the objects as well as the booleans, which will be taken true or false. And then the PHP identifiers, maybe what I just want to mention is that every variable starts with this current symbol or the dollar symbol in PHP. Dollar something. It's a variable. It's a variable. And all other rules maybe are just the same with you are familiar with them from other languages. I'm sure you know that a variable is case sensitive. This recipe is different from this recipe and also different from this recipe. I'm sure you know that from this, even from the C programming language, that it is case sensitive for variables. The variables are case sensitive. Sure, you are very, very aware of this one. So these are just rules of naming identifiers. Rules of naming identifiers. So an identifier is a general term applied to variables, functions, and various other user-defined objects. So whenever you want to give a name to a function, you are using an identifier. So just a way that you can use to uniquely identify any what can you call it? Maybe it's a function or it's a variable that you want to identify there. Or we call it a token. A token. So any identifier can consist of one or more characters and it must begin with an alphabet letter or an underscore. For variables, you use a $sign at the beginning for variables. Okay, so a variable is a named memory location. This is what I'm not going to talk about. A variable always begins with a $, and the following are all valid variables. You are saying, if you look at this one, it's a valid variable. Dollar operating system, you can use an underscore to join words here. This one, so it starts with this current symbol. Every variable starts with this one. So tikazoona kuti uri kudeclare a variable PHP uchisiya izvozvo ka titakushaya kuti variable ripi ndeti tichaya kuti variable ripi. So this is the end of this slide. So for now, I'm just going to ask for questions on the issue of static versus dynamic pages, static versus dynamic pages. Also on how do we use the PHP and the MySQL to help to be able to achieve the dynamic web pages. Do you have any questions on this one or some contributions? Those who want to contribute, questions and contributions. Questions and contributions. Okay. If I do not have questions, it's fine. Murai, do you want to say something?
No, sir. Just to say thank you. You can proceed.
Okay. What about Alpha's girl? Alpha, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, sir. I'm here, sir.
Okay. Do you have something to say on dynamic web pages versus static web pages? Just a contribution there.
Yeah. Dynamic web pages are those that have the backend. They have something that they communicate with the backend server. And the static web page are those which have only the HTML part only.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I'm sure now you people, I'm sure now you are just appreciating where you can use the PHP, where you can use the MySQL and the HTML. I'm sure you are now starting to appreciate that if you are new to all these terms or if you are new to all these things. Okay, so let me share another slide. Let me share another slide with you. And on this one, what you're just going to do, you're just going to connect the PHP and MySQL. I've said earlier that I'm not going to dive deeper into HTML. Maybe on the HTML side, I'm just going to do the form and the form validation itself, and then you are good to go on that one. Yeah, maybe posting forms on the HTML side. But the HTML tags, I'm sure you're good with that. It's very simple and very basic thing to do. Maybe what I just want to assist here is mostly on the PHP and the MySQL, on the PHP and the MySQL. How do you link all these three things? All these things. And also, I just want you to get to appreciate how do you use all these languages. Remember, you're saying here we are going to use CSS, you're going to use JavaScript, you're going to use the PHP, you're going to use the HTML, you're going to use the MySQL. So I just want to make it clear for you so that you can actually be able to apply each and every language that you are using here. And you'll be able to actually be able to identify and know that on this task, I'm going to use this one. On this task, I'm going to use this one. If you want to design, you go for CSS. Maybe if you want to do the server-side language, you want to process something, you go for PHP. Maybe you want the database there, you go for MySQL. Maybe you want to do the interactive something on the front end, you go for what? You go for JavaScript. Maybe you want to do the form validation, which is at the front side. You go for what? You go for JavaScript. Something that's what I want you to get to know so that you can quickly actually use or employ all these languages. So I'm just going to share this slide, maybe just want to put it inside in the presentation mode. Okay. Okay, there's the PHP and MySQL, the PHP and MySQL interactions. So PHP and MySQL interact with each
Say, we can't hear you. Are you still there, Sam?
Yeah, even this side I can hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you say. We can't hear you.
Vachiripo here say apa ina nchava wini.
Isitiri kuvanzwa izvo.
Muri kuvanza?
Yeah.
Guys.
No. We can't hear. We can't hear you, Sam. No, you just went off.
what about now?
We can't hear you, Sam.
Audio, please.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're now audible.
Okay, maybe I need to just log out and log in. Maybe it will quickly fix everything for everyone.
Now you're audible, sir.
Okay. So if so, okay,
We
if so,
can
it's
hear
okay.
you now, sir. Yes.
We can
hear you now. You can continue. It's fine.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks. So let me reshare the slide. Okay. Okay, so now the question is, which should I use, the MySQL or the PDO? So you are free to use whatever you like. You are free to use anything that you want to use there. You consider it. So I will be using MySQL. However, you may use the PDO when multiple database support is needed, since PDO offers support for many databases, not only the MySQL. But for this one, we will normally use the MySQL. But you can even use the PDO there. You can use the PDO. No problem. I have no problem with that. So before we can interact with the database, it should have been created. So the first thing is to be able to create the database, which is the MySQL database. I'm sure that Mr. Mtero actually have done a great job for us, or for me, by teaching you the MySQL database. And I'm sure you are well versed with this MySQL database. You are able to create the database, to run the commands there. I'm sure there are very few commands that you need at this level. Normally, the create database, use database, maybe the creation of tables, inserting in tables, selecting from tables, maybe just a little of joining tables there, the joins. You are good to go with the MySQL. And take note of that. We do normally not ask you about the MySQL database in this module. We normally tend to avoid that. I do avoid that a lot, to ask you about the database. A lot of maybe queries or so, we do not ask such things. What we do ask here is to be sure that you are able to connect to the database. You are able to you are just able to query the database. You are able maybe to handle the data from the database. You are able to actually handle the data before maybe setting into the database. Something like that. All those things we ask, because they are part and parcel of web development. They are part and parcel of web development. But for the MySQL side, we do not ask much on that one, because it will take a lot of space for the things that we need you to understand on this module. We just appreciate that you have done the MySQL database before and you just want to use it. So we normally not examine it that much. So a MySQL database can be created either through the PHP-MyAdmin interface, for example, in WAMP server, using terminal interface in Linux to access the MySQL server, or using PHP code. So you can create the database using the PHP code itself, or you can go to the database itself, to the PHP-MyAdmin, and create the database. You can do all those things. So with PHP-MyAdmin, we manually design and manipulate the database where code is automatically created on the background, just like that. Especially if you are going to use maybe the Laravel, you do not need to go and create the database physical. Normally, you put the code on the migration side where the database code and the database things, all things are going to be handled there. You can actually create the database on Go. Actually, after hosting the database, the code there, you can run the migrations, the database will be created automatically. But you have the chance of actually using the PHP-MyAdmin and create the database manually. It's a skill that you still need to know, or that you still need to understand, because it's there in the industry. You can also do that. So I'm sure you need to appreciate that as well. So you may need to be familiarize yourself with this MySQL environment before you concentrate much on database manipulation from PHP. So in other words, you need to get to know the MySQL database before you start to manipulate using the PHP code. So let's look at the MySQL database creation using what? Using PHP. But before that, maybe let me just try to close some sensitive things here. Just want to share my entire screen, but I'm afraid I will share something which is not necessary. And they start to say, vanga vakazvironga, it happens. Okay, I'm not saying there's something toxic there, but you know, yeah, zviriko zvisingafani kuonekwa nemi. So nzasi vakazenga kutotiratidza exam. I just want to share. I just want to share my entire screen. Mosva dzacho munozodzicreata, hamuri kuona mazvinhu zvatiri kutaura izvozvi, ndo zvatiri kutaura izvozvi, munozotanga watini. But anyway, what I wanted to do, yeah, I just want to run the WAMP server. This is what we call the WAMP server. To those who didn't run it before, this is the WAMP server. You just start it and then wait it for it to finish the booting process. And then when you say it's ready, just like this, if you just go, let me just, okay, you can just go maybe here. It normally needs to put the green icon there. So there is this MySQL, but I'm just going to access it through the PHP-MyAdmin. The PHP-MyAdmin. I'm just going to put my password there. I'm sure it's okay to put some stars there. Yeah, do not see it. Okay, so this is the PHP-MyAdmin. This is where you can create the databases. If you look at this one, if I click at this database, here's the list of all the database that I have, and then I can create maybe a new database. So instead of writing the commands, create database, what, you can just write the database name. Maybe I can say demo, and then I'll just create the database. And then the database will be here, will be created into here. If you want to create a new table, you can just create it here. And then you can put maybe I can say demo table, just like this. Then you can adjust the number of columns here, just maybe 6 columns, or 2 columns. And then you just click create. And then you have the table, and then you need to name the columns. Maybe it's ID, and then maybe this one, It's demo name. What else? Let me just say demo there. And then you can actually change the data type here. We are just creating the table. And then after that, you can save your table and then your table boom is created, right? Or you can use the SQL side. You can use the SQL side to create the database. You can just write create database and then you use SQL and then you run there. It's very is for you with this one. So this is the PHP admin that we are talking about. So if you are going to be a web developer, you are going to use this one much. You are going to use it. Trust me, you're going to use this one. Yeah. If you want to browse, like select. So these are the queries that you're actually running, select, creating database, creating tables, something like that. So now we are saying, instead of doing this, you can use the PHP code to create this database. So without touching the database side, you can actually create everything on the what? On the PHP side, on the PHP code. You can create everything there. You can access everything from there. You can actually insert to the database from that side. And this is actually something which is very important, because if you look at our websites there, you just want to come and log in, you just put your information on a form and then you submit. What happens there is that the SQL is going to handle all those things. Maybe the PHP is going to request the data from the database, or it's just going to insert the data from to the database, just like that. So that's where we were here. When we talk about the creation, so we can design and manipulate a database using the structured query language, the SQL. These SQL statements can be executed in PHP. To create a database, you need to first make a connection to the MySQL server. So the first thing is to link your website with the MySQL server. And a connection to MySQL is opened using the MySQL connect function. And then the function takes 3 arguments: the server name, username, and passwords, just like that. So whenever you are being asked to connect to a database, you need to know that you need the server name, you need the username, you need the password. So you use this MySQL connect function to connect to the database. So that's the first thing. You need to connect to the what? To the database itself. You need to connect to the database itself. After that, you'll be able to create, you'll be able to insert. So the first thing is to be connected to the server, so to the MySQL server, not to the database. So if we have not changed the configuration to the .ini files during PHP and MySQL installation, the default user is root with no password. So if you look at mine, there's a password there. When I've actually tried to log into the PHP admin, you've seen that I've actually asked for the password. It's because I've changed the configurations in this file. Okay, so I need to take this call. Just wait for me. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Zvinomboitika nditi vamweni vangu vari kufona. So if we have not changed the configurations to the in file, the php.ini file, normally kana usinochinja ikoko, your username is root and your password is just nothing. You do not pass anything on your password. But on my side, you find out that you'll be putting the password. So it is advisable to change these settings for security reasons. So MySQL database creation, this is just an example of you creating the MySQL database using this code. Using this code. So maybe what I have to do here, this one is just the PHP file. Is this just the PHP file? Server name is the localhost, username, root, the password is this one, and then create. This is how you create the connection. $connect or CONN. This is just the name of the variable. This is the variable which is going to store the connection to the server, right? And then MySQL connect, you pass the server name to this function and then the username and the password. Once if we run this code, this code is the one which is going to make the connection. So if it is successful, it will return something here. If it failed, it will return the error here. So it actually successfully returned the successful there. So we are saying if not connection, which means if it's not true. So if it returns the error here, we actually dial the error here. We just print the error. Else, it means we have actually managed to connect to the server. So the next thing is to create the database. And we know that the command to create the database is create database, and then this one is the database name. I'm sure from your SQL language, I'm sure you know that if you want to create a database, you use create database, and then if MySQL query, you are now saying if MySQL query connects or $connect, which is the server connection, and then you pass the SQL. So this is just the function you use to query the database. Whenever you want to run the query, you use this function, and then you echo that the database is created successfully. So in other words, here this is where you are creating the database, and then you echo out that the database is actually created successfully. Else, you say that there's error where the database being created, and then you close the connection or the database connection, you close that. So this is just the PHP code which you'll be using to create what? To create the database. This is the code that you use to create what? To create the database. Just like that. Just like that. I'm sure we can run this code. Can I have since PHP, I need to put it inside. This is why. So I'm just going to unshape so that I can navigate to my to my disk, local disk C. So I will share soon when I'm in the I need to www. All right, so let me just create a folder to work in. Just going to name it demos, and then I'll just get in. Okay. All right. So let me share my screen now. So I'm just going to create a text file. let me just call it index maybe .php. Must be a PHP file, and I'm going to run it. So it's a PHP file. So on the editor here, I'm just going to use the VS Code. Just going to use the VS Code. So this is okay. This is Julia programming. Julia programming. Yeah, just it means Julia programming. And I'm going to run up. But anyway, let me open the file that I just want to open a folder. So open a folder, and then the folder. Now I need also to navigate to. Okay, let me just try to copy this one. Sure, I can trick this one. I do this exactly. Select this folder. Yes, now I'm in here. Okay, so what I need to do is to run that script. I need to run that script. Maybe the first thing that you can do here, which is very simple, let's create the HTML, and then we just put, let me just, I'm sure there's a short code, what is this one? I'm sure there's a short code for me. Okay, I'm sure it's
just type HTML and then click tab.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure I've actually managed to do that. There's this shortcut to have everything, or to have the HTML document ready for you. This is the structure of the HTML code. I just wanted this. So these are the meta text that I've been talking about, and then this is the title, and then everything that I want to run, everything that I want to show on the on my web page comes here. Everything that I want to show comes here. So this is the HTML part of it. This is the HTML part. So I can actually put maybe the PHP code here, and then I can escape me. Even if I'm here, I can put the PHP code maybe inside this HTML. You can do so through the escaping that you have been talking about. Then you say PHP, maybe you want to escape to PHP, and then you close this one. So everything inside must be regarded as what? Must be regarded as PHP. Must be regarded as what? Yes, PHP. You can also do this as well. Or you can just do it just outside here. So if I just put maybe my head, maybe H1, maybe you can say demo document. I'm sure you are all aware on all these things. If I want to run this code now, I'll just come here, and then what I'll do, I just say localhost, then slash. Then what I'll do here is to go inside the folder. I'm sure I've named it what? Demo. What's the name of the folder? It's demos. Just like that. And then since I named the file index.php, I do not need to write index.php. I can easily just do this, and then the document or the file gets executed. And you see that there's demo document, which is this code that I've actually wrote here as a heading. And you see that you have got the demo here, the document here, which is the title. So I can say demo document again, which will become the title. If I refresh this, you see that this is the title. So I'm sure you are aware of all these things. So what I just wanted to do was to execute this code so that you see if you are able to create what. It's just to execute this code. If you are able, did I copy it very well, or there's something which is let me see what I've done here. Okay. Sure, I'm having some challenges. Maybe what I can do. Maybe I can just do this and then I just take these variables. All right. Where am I getting this error? Where is this coming from?
Isn't that like type of styling in documents? Formatting. Should be formatting of documents. It carries some characters, funny characters.
I don't know what's happening here. Okay. Because I'm just copying from the. I'm sure.
Yes.
Maybe that's what is happening here. I'm sure that's what is happening here. But normally it must throw an error. Unexpected double quotes, what it will throw an error normally if there is an error. Okay, so this one. Yeah, these ones. I'm sure I'm seeing where it is coming from. Yes, exactly. So I'm sure it's just because of these quotes which are here. These quotes which are here. And also, yeah, these quotes. Yeah, that was the issue there. So I'm sure everything is now well and correct. Okay. So if you look at this one, this is just the variable which we're just going to use for the server name, and the server name is localhost because it's on my machine, and you can even put the IP address. I'm sure it's what is it 27.27.0.0.1, something like that. You can also use the IP address which always reference to the local machine. So the server name is localhost, and then the username is root, and then the password for my database is just root as well. It's just root as well. And then what else? What we need there? The next thing is to what? Is to connect, is to create the connection. Next thing is to create the connection using MySQL connect. Is to create the connection using the MySQL connect, just like that. That's what you have to do. And then let's just go through the drill. Let's just go through the drill. Let's just go through the drill. Okay. Let's just go through the drill. I'm sure. I'm not going to type all these things. Okay. So the server name, if not connection, I'm sure I need to get something here. Where's still this error coming from? Is it about the codes? Okay, anyway. Don't think it's necessary here. You can echo out. Okay. The error is not even inside there. It's here. I'm sure that's where it's emanating from. So if there is an error, you can always use what? You can use echo out. You can echo out maybe error while connecting. Because remember, I want to connect to the server. So you can just say error while connecting. Else maybe let me just echo out a simple statement. Echo out create or database not database, server connected successfully. Server connected successfully, or Bluetooth is connected successfully. Everywhere it's now Bluetooth, what, blah, blah. Okay. So if I execute this one, you see that server connected successfully, and it's on top of the document just because of demo document, just because you are doing it here. So if you look at that, we have managed to connect to the server. So what you just need to connect to the server is this, the server name, and this username, and this password. So after having all these things set up, you need to use the MySQL connect function, and then you connect to the database. And after that, what you just need to do is to test if your database is actually connected successfully. So after knowing that, you can now run your code here. And normally the code, you can put it inside the else, because if it is going to use the database, normally if you didn't terminate your code inside this if statement, or if you didn't stop this, if there's an error, it is going to execute everything, which is going to be maybe downside here. So you just need to actually protect the code inside the else block, just like that. So the next thing was to connect to the database, but before connecting, what you need to do is to create the database. And normally to create the database, you need the SQL statement itself. The SQL statement is what? Is create database. And normally it's case insensitive. I'm sure you know this. So create database, and the database name maybe is demos database. If I just say demos database, that's database name. And then the next thing is actually to run through the MySQL query, MySQL query function. And then this MySQL query function is going to take the server connection. This connection that we have used, and then the SQL, or the query itself, which is the SQL. So normally you need to check if the database is actually created successfully. So you can either store this instance or this query, and then you can use the if statement later, or you can just decide, to just put this one inside an if statement, and then if this one actually, because it returns true if it created the database successfully. So you can use the if statement, and you can say what if this, then say database is created successfully. Else you can actually say the database or something happens while creating the database, right? Or you can print the error itself. Normally we encourage you to print the error itself so that you can try to troubleshoot, but I'm sure it's good when it's good when you're doing programming to just say the error as it is, not as it is, but to say it in a way that the users can understand what's happening within their system, right? Rather than to just say something was happened while we are processing or something like that. So we can actually echo out. I'm just echoing out that database created successfully. Maybe successfully. Okay. Then if I run this one, you see that the database created successfully, server connected successfully, then database created successfully. I'm sure you can append something /n work in PHP, escape character, or you can use the break. You can use the break statement inside here, or you can, what do you call it? You can append. I'm sure you can append the BR, the HTML code there. I'm sure it will work. Is it going to work? Okay, it's just because I've actually done or created the database before, so it's already there. So that's why it's no longer give me. So I need to check on this one. But let's just confirm if our database was created. Let's just confirm if our database was created. Where is my? Okay, so if you look here, do I have databases? Okay, let me just go to the server and then databases. Do I have demos database? You see, this is the database that we have created, this database. So we have managed to create the database using the code. So I can actually drop the database and run the code again. Let me just, how can I drop this one? No, it's demos database. Where are you? I've actually seen it here. Demos database. Okay, I just want to drop it. Demos database. I will drop database, demos database, and then I'll just run this one. I'm sure I'll win this one. Whereas the can't drop database demos, that doesn't exist. Why is it that? Is it a typo? Okay, maybe it's already out. Yeah, exactly. So it was dropped. Okay, so safer. If you look at that one, if we've managed to print this one, the top and this one just below. So I've actually able to nest the HTML code inside the PHP code. This is how you nest it. I'm sure there's a question that we normally keep asking people on how you can print something in bold, something like that. So you can use this kind of where you can, if you want to bold, you can actually nest the HTML code inside what? Inside the PHP code, and then you just run the code there, and then everything just displayed just like that. It will be boarded. So what else? What else? Okay, I just want. Okay, so that's what that was. That was that. You can actually close the connection using the MySQLi close connection to close the connection. So if you look at it, we've managed to use the MySQL database with what? With the PHP. What we have done, we've actually created the link between the PHP and the MySQL. We've actually created the link between the PHP and the MySQL, just like that, just like that. So this is how you connect to the database. So what you need to do is to connect to the server first, and then connect to the database, and then you actually create a database, and then you can query the database. So whenever I want to query the database, use MySQL query function, which is this one, MySQL query function. Whenever you want to connect, use MySQL connect if you want to connect to the server, just like that. So if you want to query the database, then use this function. And then this function is going to take the server name, the username, and the password. This one is going to take the connection, this one, the connection, and the query itself, What else do we have in here? So if our server is on the same machine, we are using to connect, then we use localhost or the IP address 127.0.0.1. So just like what I said before, you can also use the IP address here, 127.0.0.1. That IP address is just reserved since it is used to what? To refer to the local host or to the local machine or to the PC that you'll be using. So which is a loopback address used by a machine to address itself internally. So otherwise we have to specify the database host server. So it is also important to check for errors during connection and guide users accordingly. Queries are executed by the MySQLi query function. So the function takes two arguments, a link or connection to the MySQL server and the string for the query to be executed or just its variable. So example one is a procedural way of creating the database. Those who are more experienced with object-oriented programming can use the object-oriented way, which is an example. Two, which is this example. So MySQL database creation, this is the second example, which says here it's just the same. The first thing is connect to the server. And then you use the new keyword here to say this is the new instance or the new object for database what? Connection. And then after that, you do your query just like that. So all these things, I'm sure if you look at OOP or object-oriented programming, you see that whenever you're creating the object, they use the new keyword, So it's just what was being referred to here for those who normally do object-oriented program, but otherwise the results are the same. And if you look at that, you'll be using the arrow operator. The arrow operator here, you'll be using the arrow operator, this one. $connect with this arrow operator. Just like that. So connect to the MySQL database. When a database is already created, we can connect it to it using the MySQL connect function in with the 4 arguments. So we are saying if you already have the database, you can actually connect it straight by just pass the server name, the username, the password, and the database itself. Instead of just starting by connect to the server, you can do it straight. Right? So apart from opening a connection, okay, just want to make it so that you can see. So if you look at this one, creation, if you look at this, apart from opening a connection to MySQL server, the traditional argument specifies the database we need to connect it to. So we can say the localhost root, and then you put the password and the database itself. And then on the new connection, what you do, you pass the server name, the username, the password, and then you add the database itself. So it's $database here, DBase. So after doing so, what you do, you'll be connecting to the MySQL database straight. So if you do not have the database and you want to create it first, you can use the first one that you were using. First connecting to the server and then next connect to the database. But if you already have the database, you can just use this one and you actually get into the database and you can do the queries that you want to do. So the procedural way of making a connection, this is the procedural way that you can use to make a connection. And I think we have enough for this one. So I don't know if I've got the queries or if someone want to contribute on how you can connect the PHP code to MySQL. Some contributions, maybe some questions on how you connect the PHP code to the MySQL database.
So say we only reference the database name when we already have it in our server.
Yes. Otherwise, you get an error. If you do not have the database, you will get an error because there will be no database to reference. So it will give you an error. So the first thing you have to create the database and then you link it. Or you can just use the code itself to create the database. You just connect to the server and you let it create the database, and then you connect to the database. If you get me, because there's two things: the connection that we have, or that we have actually run there on my machine, it was just connected to the server and they create the database. We didn't connect to the database itself. If you now want to connect to the database, you now want to pass the name of the database. So you're having, instead of having 3 arguments, you'll be having 4 arguments. The server name, the password, the username as well, and the database name itself, just like that. And then you are good to go. You'll be connected to the database and everything will work just normal. Don't know if I have, yes. I don't know if I've got more questions or some contribution. Let's talk.
Oh, how are you say? When we created the database, we is it also not necessary for us to create the variables using PHP, such that the database has we have it, or in fact we have the table now inside the database, so that when we want to insert data into the database, then we know our variables that we have inside. I don't know whether my question makes sense.
I didn't get you correctly, but I think what you are referring to is just like your mic is giving a feedback.
Okay. I was saying we created a database using PHP, but don't we? Can we say we are finished, or we need to create now a table inside our database, such that it will be easy for us when we want to connect to the database using PHP, for us to do things like inserting data and so on. So I wanted to understand, how do you create, let's say, a table inside the database using PHP, especially the variable, the columns that we are talking about, where we are going to insert the data. I don't know whether it makes sense now.
Yeah, now it makes sense. I'm sure it's a very simple and a very easy step to do. What was the first thing there is to connect to the database. After connecting to the database, what you need to do is to create the tables. And then to create the tables, you can either do it manually in the database, or you can use the code. When I say you can use the code, it's just to run the same SQL function that we've actually used, the MySQL query function. And within that function, what you need to do is to pass the query to create a table. Like, I'm just going to do a demo. I'm just going to do a demo on that one. But what I'm just saying is the logic is very simple. It's just going to follow what you are doing. But yeah, I understand what you're talking about. If you look at this one, I just want to take this one, not creating the database, but when you're connecting to the MySQL database. This one, if you look at this one, the MySQL, then connecting to the database straight. After connecting to the database, if you want to create a table, what you just have to do here is just to run an SQL statement. An SQL statement, let me just pass maybe the database name here. We've created a database called, okay, this one. Create the database called what? Demos database. You can actually maybe create a variable and pass it there, or you can just let me just call it DB name, and then let me just put it inside here, and then sorry, I've duplicated this one, and then database name, just like this. And then this connection, what it does, it will connect to the database, and then what else? All right. What comes in here is no longer creating the database, but the SQL to create a table. So the SQL to create a table, is create what? Is create table. You want to create a table and then you put the table name. Let me just say it's demo. The table name is what? Is demo. And then what you do next is what? Normally you put these brackets and then you put what? The column name and its data type. The column name and its data type. So let me just make it maybe ID. And then let me just say what? Let me just say it is going to take the data type as in what? As an integer, and I'll put a comma, and then I'll put the second column, right? This is the first column. I'm sure that's the syntax there for the MySQL. And then the next thing is what? Maybe it's let me put what? Just maybe let me just name. And then the next thing, maybe let's say it's var character, maybe of size what? Of size, let me just put size 30, just like that. So it's just a table with what? With, sorry. Let's make sure that we mute our mic. Tinote and Nodawafa. Mute yourself. Okay. So I'm saying after doing this, what you just need to do is to run the SQL, and then now we need to create what? The table. We need to create the table. Let's execute this and see if you are going to win. You see the table is what? Created successfully. So there was an error there, and then let's look at this one. Let's look at this one. If you look at this one, I've managed to create the table. The table with what? With the name, with ID, and what? And the name as columns. So if you want to insert, it's very simple. If you want to insert, it's just to run the what? The query. The query to insert is what? You just need to create the query. Maybe here, let me just create a query. We've managed to what? We've created the table. The table is already there, or it's now there. What I just want to do is to insert, right? The code to insert it's now how do you, or it's now the level of your SQL. It's now your level of your SQL. To insert into a table, you use what? Insert into. I'm sure you put what? You put the table name. The table name is what? Is demo. And then instead of saying columns, what you can say what? Values. And there are a lot of ways you can do this. There are a lot of ways you can do this in PHP, like the way you can write it. So what I know is that I have two columns. So the first column is going to take an integer. Maybe I can say 12. And then the second column is going to take what? It's going to take, it's a var character that I'm supposed to pass, which is a what? Which is a name. So the name is what? Maybe let me just put something like a Meshach there. Maybe it's now the concatenation that can give us some errors there, and then you need to make sure that let me see. Okay, the table created successfully, so I've actually able to insert this one. So if I run this one, you see that I've got these two records because I've actually executed it twice. So I've managed to insert these values just like that. This one is just repeating because I didn't enforce this one as a primary key. That's why it is actually repeating. Otherwise, I was going to get an error. So inserting the data into the database, or creating tables, deleting tables, it's all about running what? About running the SQL statements. So how do you run the SQL statements? You just use the MySQL query here, and you just need the connection to the database and the SQL here. So this function will do everything for you. It's as good as you are just writing your SQL statements here. It's just like I'm just writing all the SQL statements here. Because if I just take this SQL statement just as it is. I'm just going to take everything, this one, right? Just going to take this and put it here. And I'll just terminate here and execute this one. I didn't get any error. And if I'm just going to browse this table, you see that I now have what? I now have these 3 rows. So it's just as good I'm writing all the code here on this one, but I'm doing it inside the PHP, and then I'm running the PHP. The PHP now is going to execute that code for me through this connection that I have, and then it executes. So this it's just like, do you know how to create a table in SQL? Do you know how to insert into a table in SQL? Do you know how to select or how to get the data from the table? I can actually query the data from the database using the select. What I just need to do is just to write the select statement here. I can just do it. What can I do here? Okay, I can just, this one is the, I can use the select statement here. The select, what I just do is to create maybe a variable there, and then I use the select statement inside, and then I will loop through using maybe a while loop just to get all the values there. But it's just like, do you know how you can do it in SQL? So if you know it, just use the PHP to query that data. Just use the PHP to insert that data. And then what you need to know maybe is just the know-how of PHP again, on how can I use PHP to execute that statement. And we are saying you can create or you can interact with the database using the MySQL query function. This is going to help you to do the insertion, the creation, maybe as well as to query the data so that you can get the data. Just like that. I don't know if you are answered. Are you answered?
Oh, yes, I've been answered fully. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about others? Do you have some contributions or something to ask? Okay. If there are no contributions, if you do not ask as well, what happened here? What did I've done here? Okay. So I'm just going to unshare my screen so that I can navigate where there are my slides, and then I will just share. Sorry, sure. I just quickly got out of my folders when I was trying to access something. Okay, so I just want to look at maybe the issue of posting forms. Let's look at the issue of posting forms before we look at validation, and then we look at the form validation. We'll be good to go. So for today to be a long tutorial, because we want to cover as much as we can so that you will be ready for your exams. So let me share my screen again. All right. Let's look at the use of or at the issue of forms. Let's look at the issue of forms. But before that, maybe let me quickly go through these forms. I'm sure I have W3 schools here. But forms here, there for the forms. Where are you? My friend, okay. So if you look at this one, there's what we call HTML form. So an HTML form is used to collect user input. The user input is most often sent to a server for processing. So normally it's like the form is there to capture the user input, and then after capturing that input, we send it to the server for processing. So this is an example of a form which is going to take the first name and the last name there, just like that. And then you just submit it. So whenever maybe you are applying for something, you always use forms. You are applying for something online, you want to do something online, you want to register something online, you use what you call forms. So normally a form use this element, which is called the form element, this one, the tag form. So the HTML form element is used to create an HTML what form for user input. And normally it will be in form of this one. So form, this is the open tag, this is the closing tag, and then you put what you call the form elements. So you just need to know some form elements there, especially the input, and then you know the input types of these form elements. So the form element is a container for different types of what of input elements such as text, fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, submit buttons, and etc. So the input element, the HTML input element, is the most used form element, this one. And an input element can be displayed in many ways depending on the type attribute. So if you look at this, you've got the input and the type is text, which displays a single line, text input field. And then what else? We've got the input, the radio, the checkbox, the submit, and the button as well as the button. So all these are the what? Are the HTML elements. So you can actually, it's very easy to design a form. It's very easy to design a form. What you just need to know is just the form elements that you want to use. If you look at this one, if I just take this code, this one, let me just put it here. So what I'm just going to do is, so that we avoid to run all this code, let me just comment out this, and then I'll comment out what else. Okay. For me to win this argument, let me just comment out everything up to here. Okay, maybe we just want to use it later. All right. So I just wanted to display this form here. I am just going to run this here. Where do I have this one? So if you look at this one, I have the first name, the last name, the first name, and the last name. And I can type my name and I can also put my last name. But how is this possible? It is possible through the use of what? Of this form element. I'm using this form element. So you see we've got this form tag and this form, the closing tag, the opening, the closing tag. So everything which is in here is the one which is giving this output. And if you look at that, we've got this label, and then this label is what is for the first name. If you look at this one, if I remove this label, you are not going to see this first name. So the label is there to just to guide the user, so that the user will know that here I must put the what? I must put the first name, just like that. And then for the input type, the type is text. If I change it maybe to something like a number, sure, there's a number, there is a type. If I try to type something like text here, it will not work. It will not work, but I need to put what? The numbers, was I've changed it to what? To number. So you can even make it password there, so that it will actually ask for the password. Can make it password here. When you type there, you see it's a form element to take what? The password. Can even what? Say email, yes, so that it will be able to take what? The email. So you need to be familiar with this one. So if you try to submit this one without putting the email, it will suggest that the email have got what you call a Gmail or something like that. If you try to submit that, it will just tell you that. So normally you need to know which type this field is going to take, just like that. So this one was just having this, and then what you need next also there is the submit button to submit the form. It's just the submit button to submit the form. So if you look at the form attributes, the form have got what called the attributes, and the attributes are what? Are action. The first one is what? Is action, which is the page which is going to process that form, which is the page which is going to process what? That form. just like that, just like that. So I think this is the background that I just wanted you to get. Input types, input form attributes. Okay, you just took some of them, all right, all right. But that's the few that I just wanted you to get. So let's look at using the post method in a PHP form. If you want to use the post, there's what we call the post. So the form, when submitted, is posted to the web server as form data. Is posted as what? As form data. So paunofila form paper what we just take is the data. So we submit it as a what? As a form data, not the whole thing that you'll be seeing there. You just submit the form data. So there are two methods for posting this data. So we can use what you call post, or we can use the get method. So there's the post method and the get method. You need to take note of these two and their differences, and on why using post and on why using what? Get. You need to take note of those things. So post data is encoded the same way as get data, but isn't it typically visible to the user in a standard browser like what? Like get method. What we are saying, if you are using post, you're going to hide the data from the user, right? So we can use it the same way we can use get, but only that if you have got the sensitive data within your form, maybe there are passwords, then use post rather than using what? Using get. So the get data is appended to the URL. Whenever you are using the get, the data will be appended on the URL. So most forms use the post method because it hides the form data away from the user and it doesn't clutter up the URL in the address bar. So post values are unlimited in length and thus are very well suited for forms, especially forms with a lot of fields. So the post as well, the values are what are unlimited in length, just like that. So using the get data comes from the URL itself, and you typically follow the name of the script file in the URL. So the start of get data is indicated with a question mark, and then the name of the field is followed by an equal sign and the value of the data. I'm just going to demonstrate on this one. Each field is then separated by an ampersand operator, and then the example of a URL with get data for first and last name will be as follows. Okay, this one I was just demonstrating. Maybe this one I can just put it on here on code. Maybe what I just need is the submit what? Is the submit button. Maybe I just need a button. Can I make it a type of submit? I'm sure it will work here, and then I'll just give it submit name. Or I can make it input type button, and then I'm sure it will work. Let me see if it will work. It have been long before. Okay, yeah, it's working. So if you look at this one, I didn't specify the method that I'm going to use here. On either I'm going to use post or I'm going to use what? Get. So by default, it is going to use the get. It is going to use get. So if I put my name here and my surname here and just submit, you are going to see that everything is going to be appended on the URL. The first name is Ezekiel and the last name is this one. So this is what we were trying to explain here. This is what we were trying to explain. So with the get, all the data is going to be exposed on the URL. So that's why we were saying if you've got the sensitive data, use the post method, because it is going to hide the data from the users. It is going to hide the data from the users. So if you look at this one, if you are using get, after this URL, you see that there's a question mark and then all the variables we start to follow here. So the first name and then its value after an equal sign, and then there is an int. We put the last name and then the value after an equal sign. So this is the form data that will be sent to the server so that it will process. It's only that here I didn't specify the server. I didn't specify the server as well. There's not that I've actually put. So I can specify the server through the action. Through the action method. So on the action, that's where I have to put, maybe if there's a file which is going to handle that, this is where I have to put maybe database, not database, maybe form handler. Maybe I've got a method, not a method, maybe I've got a file called form handler, which is a PHP file that I want to use to handle all this. Then this is the one that I'm going to do to put there. So if I try to submit this, I'm going to get an error which says that that file is not found because there is indeed that file that I've created. So maybe for that, I need to create a new file, which is a PHP file called form what? Form handler .php, just like that. So if I do this and try to refresh this, then I'm no longer having an error, but it's only that it's not returning anything because there's no code. But that's where I have to handle all the necessary code. If I want to insert that data into the database, that's where I have to handle that data. Or you can do it on the same page. If you want to do it on the same page, you can use self, or you can just leave it just blank. And then if you do so, it will just assume as if all the code that which you be handling this form is in this file, just like that. So that's how you can connect, or that's how you can send the data or the form data to a specific page to handle that. If you saw a question which you'll be asking about that, that's how you do it. So you can use also method, and then you can specify if you are going to use post, right? You're going to use what? To use post. So if I'm going to use post like this, so you are going to see that all this is going to disappear when I try to submit this form. So if I try to submit this form, why am I still getting? Okay. Let me just try to, with the post here, you see that there is nothing here. There is nothing which is still being appended here. There is nothing because I'm using what? I'm using the post method, just like that. So for the post method, you can use the method here. If you want to put the specific location where the PHP code is waiting there to handle this form data, you can just do it by using this action method, and then you send it there. And then what else? What I want to, sorry, I need to check this code. Just wait a little bit. Okay, yeah, I'm back. So I think that's it on this one. What else? What's it? Okay, you can also give your form a name there. You can just, I'm sure this is the basic thing. Maybe you can just say user data. If you want to, maybe you want to use the CSS thing, you want to use the JavaScript thing to pinpoint that form, you can also give the form a name there. You can also give the form a name there, just like that. Also, you can give also this button a name. It's a good thing to do, because if you want to handle it in PHP, you want to check on this variable. So you can make it maybe form submit, or you can just give it a name submit. It's still fine there, so that you can pinpoint this button if you want to check if the form is actually submitted, so that you can execute the code inside that. Just want to check if I've got something interesting. Accessing, if you want to access, yeah, exactly. If you want to access the data, you can see that this one post data is accessed with this post array in PHP. There's the global post array. If it is the get, you use also the get array to access the data. So for example, we have a form, so with two text boxes for the first name and last name submitted using the post method as follows. This one, and what you can do Yeah, this is the form that we have. So you can access it by using this code, echo out, and then you say first name, then you pass this is string concatenation, and then you pass post with the first name, which is this one. If you look at this first name, is the name of the input, this one, this name, just like that. So let me just quickly demonstrate on this one on how to access these values. Maybe posting to the database, you can do that. It's very simple. If you want to post the form data to the database, what you just need is to extract the data from the form data itself, which is from the post array or from the get array. And then what you do, just do the same with what you were doing when you were connecting to the database. When you are writing the queries to the database, you want to insert, you are now inserting from the variables instead of typing it directly, just like that. So it's very, very simple and it's very basic. It's just like what we are doing there. I trust you that you can do this one. You can do this one, since I've actually demonstrated on this. So what I'm just going to do here, maybe I'm just going to assume that, okay, why not? Okay, I'm just going to take this one to post to, yeah, to post to form handler.php. And what I'm just going to do here to this is to have the what? Is to have the PHP code. The PHP code that I want here is the PHP to, sorry. What I want is the code to take what? To take, so the first thing is to take the name. So I want the variable to store a name, and then this name will be taken. So let me just put nothing there, maybe. Okay, so there's first name and last name, and then maybe last name. So at first, I'm just going to put nothing there. And then the first thing you want to check if something is set so that we can try to access. But before doing this, let's not make it complex. Let me just do it straight here. Let me just do it straight here. Let me just say, since maybe we are just going to use the post, so I'm just going to use this post and then f name, and then I'm just going to post. We do not want to make it then L name, just like this. So what I'm just going to do here is to display, and normal to display, let's just use the echo there to print. What I want to echo is the what? Is the first name, f name, and normally I just want to concatenate it with what? With the line break, so that we break the line, and then I'll echo out the last name. And let me just confirm if we have the names as F name, and these are the idea. Yes, the name is what? The first name and the last name. So let me just refresh. Let me just refresh. And then, sorry, let me just refresh. And then I'll just put this one and I'll submit. So if you look at this one, I'm getting Ezekiel Shimana, just like this. And it is coming from the what? From the form handler. So it's up to you on what do you want to do after doing the code which is inside here. You can actually return to the previous page or using the redirection, or you can do what? I'm not going to dive into all those things. But if you are someone who is interested in web development, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, or I'm sure it will be actually easier for you to do all those things. But if you look at this one, we have managed to access the data. So now if you want to put it to the database, the routine is just the same. You now need to connect to the server. After connecting to the server, you now need to connect to the database. After that, you need to insert the data to the table, just like that. I'm sure I've demonstrated on that. To save time, I'm not going to dive into that. But what I was trying to do when I was trying to use the if statement is to try to protect this code so that if someone tries to run this file by mistake or just intentionally, but without the form being submitted, it will actually not execute this post. Maybe the fields will be actually empty. It's as good as like I'm just coming here and try to run this file. You see that I'll get all this error if I try to run this file directly. But if I just come here and protect this code using the what? By checking if maybe I'm just saying is what is set. I use if is set, but what am I checking? If it is set, maybe I'm checking the variable code what submit. I'm just checking the button. So we are saying if the button submit is clicked or is set, then do this. So in other words, if someone clicked the submit button, it means that that person have actually submitted the form, saying I will do this. So if I try to run this one again, there's no longer that error, but there is nothing. The code, the screen is blank because we are trying to what? We are trying to submit something. But if I do now, I can submit and I'm getting the result just like that. So that's how you can use is set to check if the form is actually submitted, just like that. So that's it on the use of what? On the use of get and the use of post. So it's just this. If you're going to use the get, you just need to use get here. When you have post here, you need to use get. Only that the get exposes the sensitive data, expose the data on the URL. That's why we normally do not use what? The get. So you can just put get here. And what you need to do is just to come here and change the method to what? To get. Just like this. You can put the small letters, there's no problem there. So if you do the same, you just get sorry, let me just refresh. And I'll just put this and then also we are just getting the same what output, but only that you see that the data will be exposed there. The data will be exposed there just like that. So that's the difference between the get method and the post method, just like that. So using a set function, I think I've actually demonstrated on this one on how you can use the insert, and that's all. Do I have questions on form handling using PHP? Do I have questions or some contribution on form handling on how do you handle a form using PHP? What about some contributions? What are questions or contributions? So it seems like everyone is satisfied with this one. Seems like everyone is satisfied with this one. Maybe maybe what I can do. Okay, on the CSS, I don't think I'm going to do the CSS. Tataurisa kwengu yakareba. Tataurisa kwengu yakareba, but I'm sure kuti ashina kumbooma nditi. Generally tine challenge rine CSS.
CSS is not that challenging. PHP kwa matofamba ikoko kondo kwakakosha.
Okay, what about others? Because what I know is on the CSS, you just need to know how you can include the CSS and why do we need CSS and what else. You just need to know CSS kana iri ku-external file unoirana sei, unoilinga sei ne-HTML page level. If you are good with that, then zvakatonaka zvakadaro. Also, you need to know if it is inline, how you can do it. Okay, there's someone who was trying to interrupt me. You can go ahead.
Ndichangokumbira kuti mungotiite go through the CSS, maybe not in the whole detail, but just kungotiitawo go through the CSS.
Okay, it's okay. Mombondibvumidza kumboita ndichidya koze. Energy. Anyway.
I'm gonna.
Hello. Hello audio.
Those guys. That's Chimbo's guys say.
I ndikutodya. Ndikutodya. All right. Anyway. Form validation. Let's talk about form validation. Form validation. And we just look at this one. It's a very important concept in web program. If you do not do it well, hacking form validation. If you do not validate your forms very well, a server and it got websites and it can also go on server which are shaking. Akomana vasende pane munoti now service attack. They can use that to exploit yourself. They can use those forms to exploit yourself. So it's very, very, very important that you do what you call form validation. So form validation is the process of checking that a form has been filed in correctly before it is processed. So you just want to make sure that before I process this form, where does it originate? Was it filed incorrectly? Is it from the actual user that who is intended to send this form? If so, then I can process it. But you need also, it's also a process to check if the data is valid for it to be processed. That's the form validation. So for example, if your form has a text box for the user to type some text input, you might want your form handler to check that they have filled in some text before you deal with the rest of the form. So there are two main methods for validating forms. And which are these ones? The server side using CGI scripts, ASP, PHP, etc., which you call the server side. So if it is the server side, you're going to use PHP. And then there's what we call the client side, usually done using the JavaScript. So normally on JavaScript, we are not going to ask much on JavaScript, but if you ask, we normally ask a lot on form of validation using JavaScript. Because normally that's where it come in hand. If you want to do the client side part of it, you cannot use PHP to use to do the client side validation. Yes, you can, but it's not necessary. They just use the JavaScript. And then the PHP is for the server side. The PHP is for the server side. Okay. I think what you need to understand, server side, client side. If it is on the client side, it means the code is actually on your browser there. When you just try to submit the form, everything is validated before we send the request to the server. Just like that. Just as good as maybe want to see if you actually filled the field that you want you to send to the server. You can just use JavaScript there. There's no need of waiting for the request to reach the server and then we return that the field ragat is empty or this field is required. So it is being done on the client side. But if it is at the server side, we now need to send the request to the server and then we validate the form at the server there using some backend code. So server-side validation is more secure, but often more strict to code, whereas client-side with JavaScript validation is easier to do and quicker too. So the browser doesn't have to connect to the server to validate the form in a client-side validation. So the user finds out instantly if they have mixed out some required fields. So this is the client-side form validation. So this is how you do it. It's very simple. Form validation performed here. Let me pick my highlighter. So the form validation will be actually done or carried out at the what? At the at the client side. This is the client PC with the web browser, which is the client, and then the form data sent to what? To server. The form data sent to server. And if you look here, the web server script, this is the what? This is the web server. So if it is the client server, so if it is the client side form validation, all the form validation will be carried out here on the side of the client, not on the server side here. So we check all the fields if it is in according with what we want on that form, but we do it on the client here. That's the client side form validation, just like that. If it is the server side, it means that we are going to do all the procedures of validate the data on the server side. So we send the query, and when the query reaches the server itself, and then that's where we do the what? The validation. So a simple form validation example. This one, consider a simple form with one text field called your name and a submit button. We have these two input fields. So our validation script will ensure that the user enters their name before the form is sent to the server side. So this can be achieved by adding a JavaScript function in the head section of HTML. So normally the JavaScript, you can put it inside the head, you can append it just down after the HTML, inside the HTML, maybe after the board. It's just up to you where do you want to put, or you can create a separate file for the JavaScript itself. I'm not going to dive deeper into all those things. I'm sure for the exam we do not need that, but for those who want to program, you can go ahead and do all those things and experiment with the JavaScript just that way. So here is the form creation. I'm sure on the form creation, we have done all this. So the first part of the form is the form tag, which is this one. I'm sure we've done this. The method is post, and then the action is dummy.php. And then on submit, you use what? Return validate form. So if you look at the attributes of the form, there is the only submit. The only submit. This on submit is just an attribute which is going to call the validate form. The validate form. So if you submit that, you need to validate form first. So on submit, we validate the form, and then just like that. And if you look at that, this is the JavaScript, which is the client side. So the form is given a name of contact dash form. This is so that we can reference the form by name from our JavaScript validation function, just like that. So the form uses the post method to send the data off to a dummy PHP page. So finally, the form tag includes an onSubmit attribute to call our JavaScript validation function, validate form, when the send details button is pressed. So the return allows us to return the value true or false from our function to the browser, where true means carry on and send the form to the server, and false means don't send the form. This means that we can prevent the form from being sent if the user hasn't filled it in properly. So the thing is just not to maybe want to check if the user actually filled something there or not. Maybe you want to check the pattern there. Maybe if it is the password, you want to check if you've actually put maybe 5 characters or more than 5 characters, or you want to check if there are numbers and what and the mixture of characters, and you want to check maybe capital letters and what, and you know that when you are trying to submit a form with a password, all those things are checked. That's the validation process that we're talking about. That's the validation process. So this on the client side, you can use the JavaScript. So the rest of the form prompts the user to enter their name into a form field, which is the contact name, and adds a send details and submit button. So this is the the form itself. And then this is the script, which is the JavaScript. If you look at this, we've got a form. If you look at this, we've got this. This is the JavaScript code. And if you look at the JavaScript code, it's not actually, there's no much difference with the code that you write maybe in C programming, maybe in C++, maybe in Java, maybe even in the PHP itself. A function is just a function. It's just the same. The if statement is just the same. The for loop is just the same. The while loop is just the same. Maybe with the PHP, it's just the difference is that is just on the variables. When you just declare variables on PHP, you put the $sign, but here you do not put the $sign. You can use even or you can use what? There are a lot of keywords that you can use to define, maybe even constant, what, blah, blah, to define maybe objects as well, or define variables on the JavaScript side. You can do that on your own there. But otherwise, the code is just the same. So maybe what you just need is to be able to get the value of the what? The value of the value from the form. After getting the value, you check if it is empty. This is how you check if it is empty. If it is empty, you can just alert that please fill in your name box. Then we say valid, we set valid to false, and we return valid. If we return valid, it means we are going to return. If there's nothing, we will be returning false. Else we're returning true, because initially we have set this one to true. That's the logic there. So once if you return false, it means you are not going to execute anything there. In other words, you are terminating what? The execution. So there will be no form which will be sent to the server until you actually enter something on the box. So this is the client side. We are preventing the code or the form to be sent to the server, just like that, just like that. And then you close what? You close your script. So the first name, the first file line script type, then text, or what? JavaScript tells the browser that we are writing some JavaScript code. And then the HTML comment, this one in the second line hides the script from older browsers that don't understand JavaScript. So you can hide that to those which do not understand the JavaScript. But I think you get this one. I don't know, is there any need of demonstrating on this one? I think this is just the basic thing there. And
yeah, I think it's making sense.
I don't know others. Do I need to write this? I'm not getting enough feedback, but anyway. Okay, thank you. Silence is what is good. I think here, if the field is empty, the user is what is warned with an alert box. So it will display the alert box, and then it will stop the form to be actually displayed. So if it is on the what do we call it? So if it is on the, these are the standard events, you can use in events, these events, the JavaScript events, offline, on bots, on play, can check, or on change, on click. These are just events which are in the but you can use with the JavaScript. With the JavaScript. This is just the introduction to JavaScript, but I'm not going to deep into this one. Maybe what I can look at is the advantage of using the JavaScript. So the JavaScript client side mechanism provides many advantages over traditional CGI server-side scripting. JavaScript can be used to trap user-initiated events such as button clicks, link navigation, and other actions that the user initiates explicitly or implicitly. Advantage of using JavaScript are lesser server interaction. Normally, less server interaction. It means we are also saving the data on the user side. Just imagine every click you want to load the data from the server to your phone. Every click you want to load the data. You see, even if the network is slow, so every click you want to load the data from the server, you see that it's not gonna be easy to for the client or for the user to use that website, which actually keep on refreshing on each and every click. So less server interaction will be a great advantage for using the JavaScript, because since everything is there on the user side or on the client side. Also immediate feedback to the visitors. They don't have to wait for a page reload to see if they have forgotten to enter something. So you have filled the form. So if you forgot something, we need to tell you immediately, not wait for you to not wait for the server to respond. Send the query to the server, and then the server will respond. Just imagine if the network is slow, you can maybe take 30 seconds while waiting, and then you'll be told that you didn't fill in your name, just like that. But otherwise, otherwise you'll be told as soon as you press submit by JavaScript. Also increased interactivity. You can create interfaces that react when the user hovers over them with a mouse or activities via the keyboard. So just like using those events, you can use those events. Also richer interfaces. So those are, and there are some limitations. So JavaScript cannot be treated as a full-fledged programming language. It lacks the following important features, which is client-side JavaScript does not allow the reading or writing of files. This has been kept for security reasons. JavaScript cannot be used for networking applications because there is no such support available. JavaScript doesn't have any multi-threading or remote processing capabilities. So JavaScript development tools, what do you need? Yeah, so one of major strengths of JavaScript is that it does not require expensive development tools. You can code in a simple text editor, such as Notepad, since it is an interpreted language inside the context of a web browser. You don't even need to buy a compiler. So if you look at JavaScript, you have to install chakati, you need to a server to run a JavaScript. So
Yes.
yeah, so it's just instant there for you to run. The browser is just always ready to run the JavaScript code, just like that. So to make our life simpler, various vendors have come up with very nice JavaScript editing tools. Microsoft front page has developed a popular HTML editor called the front page. You can use what we call the front page text editor, the Dreamweaver, blah blah coding JavaScript. I think this one is just a demo of how you can code the JavaScript. Normally the JavaScript you can actually put inside the head tags and normally use these tags called script. I'm sure I've actually showed you, and then this everything that follows in between these tags is what is regarded as a JavaScript code, just like that. So I think on this one, I'll just share the slide for you. Can try to follow experimenting. I think that's the best way to get it. So this is how you can just this. If you look at this one, if you look at this one, script language JavaScript type is just text or JavaScript. So you need to include the type here on this tag. You need to include type as what as the attribute, just like that. You need to include type as the attribute there, and then you have, and then the language as well, just like that. And then everything that you put in is what is JavaScript. Anything that you put inside those is just JavaScript. So this was the .write function. But and then if you want to create the variables, you can use just by inserting the value, then it can automatically detect the type of the variable. it can automatically detect. This one is an integer. This just like what we are doing on PHP. We're not saying int something or string something. You just declare the variable and put the value, and put the value. So by just putting the value, it can automatically detect. Sorry. Also, you can use the semicolon to terminate or not. Also, the issue of case sensitive, it is case sensitive. Like all other languages, it is case sensitive. Commenting is just the same. But this one, it was just a basic, like on basic syntax of JavaScript. So normally, what I want you to do, whenever you try to do the JavaScript thing, do it while trying to do the validation from the client side, validation form. And then on the validation on the server side, we will be normally using the PHP. And what you do there is just to take maybe the value, like what we have been doing from the form. And after having the value from the form, what you do there is to actually run the validation. And how do you do that? You just set your rules there for the validation. For this box or for this input to be valid, it must be like this, else you terminate the code just by returning false, just like that. That's how you do the validation. That's how you do the validation using either JavaScript or PHP. I'm sure it's very easy. If you try to Google it, you get everything there on the internet. It's just there. It's just your willingness to learn. It's just your willingness to learn. I don't know if I've got some questions here. I don't know if I've got some questions or some contributions. I don't know if I've got some questions or some contributions.
Are you going to share the slides?
Hello?
Are you going to share your slides after the lecture?
Yes, I said I'm going to share.
All right, thank you. I think that would be helpful.
Hello.
Especially the PHP one. Inini ndisingatombooni maslides enyu, network yangu iri down, saka amene mukatipawo slide iroro rePHP.
It's okay. I will share with you.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, let me just quickly get into CSS. And what we're going to do is just the basics of the CSS, and then I'll close this tutorial. Okay, so CSS, which is cascading style sheets, It's cascading style sheets. Ungazoti CSS hapana zviripo zvinomboshamisa. I just say cascading style sheets. So cascading style sheets is a style sheet language used to describe the presentation of a document written in a markup language. So it's just a what? It's just a style sheet language used to describe the presentation of a document. So in other words, the CSS comes in hand when you want to nice the presentation now. The HTML, there's just the structure. Is there to give you the structure of the website. But you want it now to look nice. You want it now to give it maybe some colors there. That's when the CSS come in handy there. So it's there to describe the presentation. How is it going to be presented? We know the structure. We know that there is going to be a name. If you look at this one, we know that there's going to be this label code name. But do you want it in this color? Do you want this in this color or want it to be red? That's when the CSS come in hand there. That's when the CSS come in hand. So it describes the presentation of a document in a written markup language. So in most common application is to style web pages written in HTML or XHTML, but the language can be applied to any kind of XML document, including SVG and XUL. CSS is used to help readers of web pages to define colors, fonts, layout, and other aspects of document presentations. So it is designed primarily to enable the separation of document content or written in HTML or a similar markup language from document presentation, which is written in what? In CSS. So advantages of having CSS or of using CSS. So the separation of document content and document presentation can improve content accessibility, provide more flexibility, and control in the specification of presentation characteristics, and reduce complexity and repetition in the structure of content. So in other words, when you're doing CSS, what you are trying here to do is to separate the presentation content with the document content. The presentation code, which is the CSS, we want it to be separate from the what? From the document. Otherwise, we're just going to put everything inside the HTML file. But no, we are just saying the file become maybe too big. Readability, complexity there comes with all that if you mix HTML and the CSS. So the CSS come in hand when you want to separate the presentation and the structure of the what? Of the document. So whenever you are doing inline CSS, or whenever you are mixing the CSS and HTML, know that you need to minimize that. You need to minimize that. Though these days with other libraries like the Tailwind CSS, the Bootstrap, which are now coming to diminish that advantage of having separate CSS. But though it's still debatable though. So CSS can also allow the same markup page to be presented in different styles for different rendering methods, such as on screen, in a print, by voice. Even if you look at CSS, you can use it to detect the viewport, or if you are rendering on a device or any laptop, so that it can display the website differently according to the device that you are using. All those are the advantages of what? Of using CSS. So CSS allows developers to control the style and the layout of multiple web pages all at once. Just imagine that if I have maybe 5 web pages with this title document demo, I can style it using one line. If I'm using external style sheet, I can design it using maybe one line, and then it will affect all the 5 pages, just like that. So CSS allows developers to control the style and the layout of multiple web pages all at once. The web developer can define a style for each HTML element and apply it to as many web pages he or she wants. To make a global change, simply change the style and all elements in the web are updated automatically, just like that. So syntax of CSS. The CSS syntax is made up of 3 parts. There's what you call a selector, a property, and a value, which is as follows. So the first thing, we need a selector. On the CSS, you need what we call a what? A selector. And then after that, you put these curly brackets, you put what we call a property and its value. So the selector will be selecting the HTML element. And then the property is the one or the attribute that you want to change. And then you put the value there. So any HTML element is a possible CSS selector. Any HTML element, be it a BR, a break, a horizontal line, be it a paragraph, be it a heading, any HTML element that you can think of, you can use it as a selector here. You can use it as a selector. Excuse me. Also, the selector is simply the element that is linked to a particular style. So we are just saying, if you want to change the style of a particular HTML element, you just use what we call a selector. This selector is the one which will be linking the HTML element to this style that you want to apply. For example, the selector P here in P, then text indent 3EM. What we are just saying there, we are saying maybe the paragraph or the paragraphs must have this indentation, just like that. So P is now our selector there. So the selector is normally the HTML element or a tag you wish to define. So the property is the attribute you wish to change. So if you want to change any attribute, maybe it's the color there. That's the property, and then you put the value, and each property can take a value. So the property and the value are separated by a colon. Normally they're separated with what? With a full colon, and surrounded by curly braces, just like this. For example, if you want to change the whole board, the color of the whole board to black, you can just use this CSS. You can just use this. So you can do this inside the HTML document itself, or you can do it outside the HTML document. So NB, if the value consists of multiple words, put it inside what? You can use the quotes there, like sans serif for the font family, just like that. So the syntax for CSS, you can specify more than one property or separated with the same colon. The example below shows how to define a center aligned paragraph with a red text color. So what you can do, maybe it's a paragraph, that's the selector, and then you can put these brackets, and then inside text align, you want to align the text center, see here, and then you can put a semicolon to show that this attribute, that's where it ends, and then you want to adjust the color as well to red, you can just put it at the end. You can append that. So to make the style definition more readable, you can describe one property on each line like this. If you look at this, text align, center, color, black, just like that. So you'll be terminating on each and every line, just like that. Where this one is your selector, and then the attributes will go inside the curly brackets, just like that. As simple as that. That's the syntax for the CSS. So you can also group that you want all your headings from H1 to H6, or you've got multiple elements that you want to style using maybe just one style, just like this. So which means the color green is going to affect all the headings. It's going to affect all the headings. So with the class selector, you can define different styles for the same type of HTML element. Is what you call the class selector. So in other words, you can give your HTML element the class selector. Say that you want to have two types of paragraphs in your document, one right aligned paragraph and one center aligned paragraph. Here is how you can do it. Styles p.right, and then you can also do p.center, and then you put the text align there. You then have to use the class attribute in your HTML element as class. So normally you can actually omit this p and just say .right, .center without putting this p. It will just work as well. But what we just need to do is to make sure that in the paragraph there you put the class, that where we're giving some element, some name there, inside that tag you can also give the class, and then you can use the class here as a selector. So in other words, this paragraph will be right aligned, and then this paragraph will be center aligned, since on the style file here we are using this selector as what? As a center. So for the comments, it's just the same with what we are doing maybe in C programming or in any other language. Only that single line comment, you cannot use it. You just use this one, the multi-line commenting style. And then let's talk on how you can insert. And this is the most very important part of CSS. And normally we do ask this one. When a browser reads a style sheet, it will format the document according to it. Now we are looking at inserting style sheets on our HTML documents or on our PHP documents. There are 3 ways of inserting a style sheet. Number 1 is external style sheet. Number 2 is internal style sheet. Number 3 is inline styles. Each and every way of inserting these style sheets have got its own advantages and its own disadvantages. So an external style sheet is ideal when the style is applied to many pages. So whenever you have the style that you want to apply to many pages, you can use external style sheet. Excuse me, with an external style sheet, you can change, you can change the look of an entire website by changing one file. Each page must link to the style sheet using the link tag. So for example, here, what I can do maybe to quickly demonstrate on this one, maybe I can just create a style sheet file here, external CSS file, and then I'll just say maybe style.css, just like that. And then after doing so, since it's an external style sheet, what I want to do, maybe let me see if I can target something here. Okay, what I just want to target is this one. Is it the H1? This one, the H1. What I want to do is just to come here and say H1, just using the class, and then I'll get into this, and then what I'll do there, what do I need is maybe the color. Let me just change it to green, just like that. I'm not going to do anything fancy here. And then why is it okay? So I didn't do this. I have to link the external style sheet with what? With the file that I'm using. I have to link that so that the styles can take effect. So on the link, what you have to do is to put, so the link, you put it inside here, inside the head section. That's where you put the link. And then on the link, sorry, it was supposed to give me, okay, so the relationship is what? Is the style sheet, and then the URL here, I'm just going to say style.css because it's in the same status, it's in the same folder, so there's no need of giving the file path. And then what else? I'm sure I have to include the type here, which is text or is the text or CSS, just like that. So if I refresh this one, you see that this one changed from black to what? To green, just like that. So whenever, if you want to change, if you have got multiple pages with this H1 and you just link each and every page with this style sheet, it means that every H1 tag is going to change. So you can use this H1, which is the name of the element, as the selector. If you look at this, I've used H1 as the selector. So if I want, I can also use a class here as the selector, and I use the dot operator. Maybe if I want to do that, I can just come here and make sure that in here I give a class here, and I just name it what? Just H, like that. And then if I refresh this one, I will still have this one. I still have this one, just like that. So you can use the class, or you can also use the ID. I can give the ID. I can also use what? The ID. And what I just have to do is to come here and say, and use a hash. So only an ID, use a hash. If you want to use the ID to pick the elements, you can use the hash there. You can use the hash there. So this is how you can use external style sheet. So you can style almost many pages using one file, So the browser will read the style definitions from the file, my style.css, and format the document according to it. So an external style sheet can be written in any text editor, the file should not contain any HTML text. Your file sheet should be saved with a .css extension like what I've done. An example of a style sheet file is shown below. This is an example. I'm sure it's just the same as this one that you are just doing here. It's only that I've actually styled just one tag or one element. So there's what we call the internal style sheet. So an internal style sheet should be used when a single document has a unique style. You define internal styles in the head section by using the style tag. So in other words, here you are using the style tag, just like this, and everything, you put everything inside. So you put everything CSS inside this text. So it's just as good as we are just going to the HTML and we are defining the text, the style text, and then you paste all the CSS, and it will just work that way. It will just work that way. So that's the internal. So it's now within the document, but in the head section. So this is how do you do it. So the browser will now read the style definitions and format the document according to it. So what you're just saying, you are just coming, instead of write on a separate sheet, you're just coming here and put the style inside this head section. You're just going to put style, and then the type is what is text or CSS, just like this. And then everything will come in here. Maybe it's H1 that you want to target, and then normally maybe I want to change the color to red. Let's see this behavior, and then let me refresh. Nothing is happening, which means the external is taking over than the internal. So let me remove this one and see. And then you see this is red. So in other words, the external will take effect than the internal. That's the order there. So in other words, at first it will execute the internal style sheet, and then it will visit the external sheet. So in other words, everything will be affected by the external style sheet. But if you look at this one, that's how you use the internal style sheet. You can use this style text, and then you put everything inside. So the thing is, you use only this one if you are applying the CSS to a single page. Otherwise, it goes against the need of separating the CSS and the HTML. Because if you are going to put the actual CSS for a certain website, you find out that you are going to have many lines of code, which means the same file with the HTML we're behaving maybe so many lines of code there. And you just imagine if you're going to render it on the user side. Okay, that's the internal. Then an inline style loses many of the advantages of style sheets by mixing content with the presentation. So use this method sparingly, such as when a style is to be applied to a single occurrence of an element. To use inline styles, you use the style attribute in the relevant tag. So the style attribute can contain any CSS property. The example shows how to change the color and the left margin of a paragraph. So normally you use this one if you want to effect a single HTML element. So maybe just want to target. Maybe you've got many paragraphs, but you just want to target one paragraph. Maybe here. You can have maybe many paragraphs, and here it's H2 and here it's H3, maybe H4. We have got the headings from H1 to H6, right? So if I do this, they are all green. They're all green. Why? Okay, it's because I'm using the class here. I'm using the class. I'm using the ID. So if I just say H1 and refresh this, you're going to see that what's happening. Let me just have a look. Where is my ID? Okay, see. Let me move. Okay, let me just remove this. I'm no longer interested in this. Just want to see the H1. All right. Let me just refresh. Okay, yeah. So I have this one in red and then all these ones in black. Maybe I just want this one to be green, which is the H2. What you need to do, you can use the inline star. And if you look at the syntax, just put star and then you put the value with the full colon and you put the attribute full colon and then the value, you terminate margin, which is also the attribute, and then you put the value and then you terminate. So what you just do here, I just put what style as an attribute style, and then what I'll do there, I'll just put color since it's the attribute, and then I'll just say green. And then I'll terminate. If there's another attribute that you want to put there, I can just put there. And if I execute, you see that this one is just now green. So that's the inline. You are applying to every line of code that you want it to be affected. That's the inline. And he said that first. So there's multiple style sheets. If some properties have been set for the same selector in different style sheets, the values will be inherited from the more specific style sheet. For example, an external style sheet has these properties for the H3, like what I've actually tried to experiment. If the code or the styles in the external sheet and those in the internal style sheet, what will happen? This is what they are analyzing. I'm sure you can experiment with this one, but since it is the last one, let me just try. So in the external style sheet, is these properties for the H3 selector, text align, right, font size, and this one here, and we've got this one. So if the page with the internal style sheet also have got the links to the external sheet, style sheet, the properties for H3 will be, if you look at this one, the color will be red, since only this one got the color red, and then the text align will be right. But if you look at this one is the external. They've got what? They've got left, but the internal have got what? Right. So it will take the right, and then the font size, it will take this 20, not this 8, just like that. So that's it on CSS. I don't know if we have got enough on this one. Do we have some questions on CSS? Do I have some questions? Do I have some contributions? If there are no questions.
Sorry, sir. I think on the last part for the order in which internal, external, and inline, which one will end up dominating? I think that one I did not get it very well. So that's what I just want to know. I did not get it very well. The last part. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What we are just saying is that let me look at this one. I have the inline, I have the internal, and then maybe let me put the external. Let me put just the external and style .css. What else? Maybe let me put the type text / CSS. And then in the external, let me just go What else can I do here? Okay, let me just go and distill the H1. We're going to style all the H1. Let's just check this one. We are saying we've put this. All right. And then we're going to have this one is an internal style sheet. Which means if you are saying internal style sheet, it's in here. We're going to have it in here. Right? And then what you want to do here, you want to assess on what is going to, if you look at this one, let's assess this one on the issue of alignment. It is actually right aligned, this one. Right aligned. And where is this right alignment? It's in the internal part. It's in the internal part. So in other words, the external sheet, they've got the alignment as what as left, but it is being overridden by the internal, by the internal style sheet. So in other words, if you have the same attribute in the external sheet and also in the internal style sheet, the one which is going to take effect is the one which is internal style sheet. I don't know if you are now together.
Yes, yes, I think I get you. Yeah, I'm getting it.
Yeah. So that's what I was trying to explain.
Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you are welcome. So team, do I have more questions? Do I have some questions or some contributions? I think it's now 9:15. I think it's time for me to travel back home, to go home. So I'm now stopping to record, yeah, so that we can talk. Yeah, Clara.